Alrighty, I'm back again and preparing to do a little paint enhancement to the New York Central tender. This is kind of a follow-up to the video that was done where the locomotive was essentially painted. The tender got a little bit of paint and he's going to get some more. What we've got here to start, I'm going to use my Badger paint mixer. This is one of the best things in the world for stirring up any kind of paint, lacquer paints, any kind of solvent-based acrylic paints, water-based acrylic paints like the Badger Modelflex. What I'm going to be using on this, I've got the Badger Modelflex Engine Black, and I'm going to also use some of the that brown mix that I made. Was like 4 parts of the roof brown, 1 part rail brown, and 1 part rust. I need to thin it a little bit. It's that's going to be used just kind of enhance the wheel sets and the trucks and whatnot, and I'll show that as we go along. I've added another little something to my arsenal of airbrush equipment and supplies, in that I have this airbrush holder and a kind of a containment center for the fluids and the overspray. This is good for holding the brush and then later on for cleaning the brush. This is produced, I believe, by the Iwata company. It retails for $24, $25. I got this online from an eBay seller for like $11.50, $11.95, whatever the heck it was. Quite the savings. It's got a little cradle here which holds the airbrush firmly in place, and the tip here, actually you insert the tip of the airbrush in here and you can put your fluids and whatnot from the airbrush going in, and you can shoot air into the bottle. Okay, it has a filtration system here. You pop this little lid and it has a little filter here. It comes with 2 additional filters, and it'll take a while before that, you know, accumulates a whole lot of stuff. The nice thing about it is the jar is glass. Okay, this jar is a glass jar. All right. So you do want to be a little careful. You don't want to knock it on the floor. It has a nice little counterbalance leg here for holding it, and this is going to be a nice new addition to my airbrushing supplies. Well, let's get started. Okay, assembling this little Badger paint mixer, real simple. A little stem on the tip here. You simply insert the mixer arm rod onto the little stem, and this will get right down to the bottom and it will mix the paint. That's what I'm going to do now. Okay, we take the lid off, take the little plastic cover off the lid, and now I'm going to place this little top of a pill jar over the top, like so. And this is going to catch any of the overflow from mixing. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. We'll go ahead and turn this on, go down into, and right to the bottom of the bottle. Now when I bring the mixer up, this little pill bottle is going to catch any overflow that splashes off. And there's a few little dots right around the edge of it there, as you can see. I don't know how well you can see it. Let's see if I can bring that in. Oh yeah, you can see some of the little dots surrounding it. It does a nice job catching the overflow, or the spillage, I should say. And then it's a simple matter of wiping this clean. And then I also will quite simply just turn it on and run it against the paper towel. Don't scream. There we go. put that aside for now. We'll use it again a little later. Now that I have that done, I'm going to take a pipette and pull out some paint. I'm going to take probably about a half a pipette full of the black paint, and maybe a little more. What you want to avoid doing is avoid having the tip touch the very bottom of the jar. You don't want to pick up any of the solids. And in it goes, right into the cup. Now I'm not going to add any thinner or any, I might add a drop or two of retarder, but I'm not going to add any thinner at this point. I'll clean off the pipette, put it aside. And here's the retarder. I'm going to take just 2 drops, like so. Cover this, put it away. Put the plastic back over the top of the bottle. Cap it. Hold this down tight and cap it. And there we have it, nice and sealed once again. Okay, so let's get a little stirrer-upper here, a little piece of bamboo skewer, and just kind of stir this in here a little bit, mix it up. Mix the retarder with the paint just a bit. And let's bring that tender up here for painting. The sides of the tender had gotten enough paint on them, but the front remains unpainted. And just before I start this, I'm going to cover the end of the plug here with a little blue painter's tape. The plug was the only thing that needed tape on it. There's no other details to cover. So I'm just going to give it a real quick, make sure we got paint coming. Yeah, I'm going to give it a real quick few little hits of the black. I'm going to turn like so. I want to do the steps real well. Get down here and get this front deck. Steps. Now we're going to go to the back, and I want to get this area of the back here, okay? I want to get this top deck. This got a little paint on it when we're doing the engine, and now I want to do the back. This also received some paint originally. I'm just going to darken it just a bit more. And just a real quick over the side, and again over the other side. That's it. And as always, I'm going to give it a little assistance in the drying department. Very nice, very nice. Ooh, very nice. Now I deliberately did not hit the coal load with the paint. The reason for that is quite simple. This is an actual coal load on the thing, and coal has a little bit of a sheen to it. As if you've ever seen actual lump coal, it has a bit of a sheen to it. So I didn't want to dull that. This engine black has a dulling effect overall to the black, and I wanted the overall color on the car to be black, and I've got that. I might lighten up that number there just a little bit, and a little bit on the last few letters of the New York Central might look a little dark, but we'll see. We'll see. What I'm going to hit it with next, along the bottom and to the trucks and the wheel sets, is with the 4-part roof brown, 1 part rail brown, 1 part rust color that I made up for the Locomotive. Okay, here we go. Now, I added 1 drop of the retarder and 2 drops of the Vallejo airbrush thinner to this mix. I want it to spray out evenly and to spray out more along the lines of a wash. Now, what I'm going to do to make sure I get the wheels thoroughly covered, I'm going to move the tender back and forth as I do the bottom. This will ensure the wheels are covered. Do the other side the same way. All right, now I can certainly see that. Get a little more. This is mostly for the trucks and lower portion of the tender. Okay, to make it look a little dirty. And I think I've done that. Yep, looks pretty dirty there. And the wheels are evenly covered as well. So this part is complete. All right, as you can see, I did clean up the letters just a little bit. What I did is I took a one of these little makeup applicators, cotton swab type applicators, with just a little bit of the Vallejo thinner on the pad. I would lightly touch down until I remove the amount of paint I wanted off the letters, and then quick dried it with the hair dryer to make sure that the paint didn't run off too far. Now this way the letters look, they're visible, but they don't look overly clean. They have a little bit of dirtiness to them. That's the look that's the look I was going for. I even did the same with the rear number here, a little bit. I was able to clean that up some, so it doesn't look too bad. The only part I couldn't get was the one which is under the ladder, and obviously that can't be seen. So I'm not going to worry too much about the gallons and the tonnage of coal that's listed on the back there. That is dirty, that will be dirty, because that's where a lot of the coal dust will accumulate, as you see when this becomes a weathered tender. Here's the final look at the tender. I gave them another shot of brown along the wheel sets and the trucks. I gave them another shot of the engine black along the side of the body, just to dull the lettering a little bit. It was a little too bright white for what I'm working on. If I think it needs to be done again, lightened again, I'll do it again. Both sides. Here we go. Okay, so the tender is now ready for weathering along with the locomotive. Okay, here we have some of the weathering ingredients, or the champions of the weathering system. I'm going to be using some engine black for little touch-ups and whatnot. We've got some rail brown, we've got some earth, which is, we'll see, and reefer gray, which will be good for representing some of the lime scale areas on a locomotive where the water comes from, when the water splashes out and drips and whatnot. Then we've got the AIM Products weathering powders. We've got the one that has soot black, light gray, brick red, rusty brown. Another one has got dark rust, medium earth, grimy black, and light rust. I'm thinking mostly I'll be using the soot, maybe some of the dirt and whatnot, and not a lot of the rust. We have some Q-tips, which I got this from another video. A tip about Q-tips. A tip for using Q-tips to apply some of the powders. Little cups for dipping the brushes into, denatured alcohol when needed, and wet water. Now, wet water is created by putting a drop of dishwashing detergent, such as Dawn, into 12 ounces of water. This simply breaks what's called surface tension. allows the paint to adhere better without beating up or running off whatever you're putting in on metal, plastic, what have you. Adding a drop of dishwashing soap essentially makes water wetter. There's a word for it, it escapes me right now, but it's a term, the way desiccant is used for drying things. Call it a water cake. That's not the word, but it makes water wetter. That's why it's called wet water. This is also the basis of a lot of scenery applications for allowing glues to adhere and to sink in better to your ground foam material and the like. And then of course I've got my little selection of various brushes and pipettes for putting the liquids into a smaller cup. We've got a little micro brush here. I'm going to use this a bit to to clean up some of the letters on the tender. I started using it yesterday and it seemed to work well. Without removing a lot of surrounding black paint, it did a great job on removing the paint from the letters themselves. Now it takes a little doing, and it's a little real intricate, but it works. It really does work. So we're going to get started. Hey, what do you know? It worked! Use the extra fine micro brush, okay? Dip it in the Vallejo airbrush thinner. Then take the excess off on a piece of paper towel, just roll it. Then kind of knock it against my finger a little bit. Then each letter, while I held the car, I held it by the co-load and by the bottom. So I held it between my fingers like so as not to really disturb any of the paint. And then little by little, I went over each letter, and wherever they were on the rivet, you couldn't really get the brush around it, so I just kind of dabbed at it very gently, and I was able to remove the paint off the white letters, and pretty much I got the numbers on the back clean as well. And I was even able to get the number 1, which is sitting behind the ladder. Just a few little tiny dabs of the extra fine micro brush. So that idea worked. I just wanted to show you that before we proceed. One of the little details I like to point out was, remember how careful I was to keep the bail all nice and shiny during the painting process by removing it. Well, there was another little piece of brass right here, okay? And I did not remove it from the Locomotive. I was trying to clean it in place. Finally realized I'm not going to get it clean the way I want, so I removed it. And in doing so, I removed the entire piece, and when I put it back in, I broke the seal of the paint, and you can see right here, there's just a little bit of this is actually a gold colored piece that's attached separately. So I actually knocked off a little piece of the black weathered paint right from around the edge. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hit that with some engine black, thinned engine black. Before I put the brush in the paint, I'm going to dip it in a little bit of the wet water, then dip it down into the paint. Believe it or not, this is still pretty well stirred up from yesterday. And I want it to be a little on the thin side. I'm going to take one of these cups, I'm going to invert it upside down and kind of use it as a little palette to mix this a little bit up here and to thin it. Make sure it's thinned real well. I don't want a heavy application of paint on this little part that I'm referring to here. And with that, I'm going to come in with a really super duper fine brush, and I'm going to just touch down on the base, all around where it was lifted away from the boiler. That's it, color's restored. We'll let that dry, and then we move on to the next project. You can see there is no longer any gold showing around the base of this little part. All right, I did one side off camera just to make sure I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm really new at this, okay? So I wanted to get a little practice in behind camera before I did this on camera. Now, this shows up as brown, and this is just a little enhancement going on here. I'm going to dip this into the water first and put it on the bottom of another overturned cup. Add more of the wet water. Then I'm going to dip into the rail brown with the brush that's loaded with water, and I want to make a wash. Let's see if I can show this here. This is a wash. It's super, super thin. Can y'all see that? It's super thin. Okay? So now I'm going to take this wash. I'm going to hold down the coal load, and I'm going to apply the wash, this wash, to the trucks. Both trucks. Front and rear. Okay. And I'm going to take this along. I'm going to go along this lower ridge here of the tender. Where it's creates this kind of like a shelf effect. And if there's any place that, seriously, that dirt would accumulate, it would be in this. Now, earlier on in this video, I showed a scene from, well, a still from New York Central of several stills of these locomotives and tenders being washed. So, you know, there's my photographic proof that they did care for their fleet. But this one is, you know, out on the road, so to speak. I'm going to get a little bit on the step here, between the rungs of the steps. Those get dirty. The men climb on and off. I'm going to get this front step here. Just going to get this a little weathered up on here. I'm going to put some of this onto the deck. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some rail brown. I'm going to paint the brakes. What I'm doing now on the brakes, done a few, forgot to turn the camera on. That's me all over. Got my flashlight here so I can make them out. And you can see them right there. This is just the rail brown. This is not a rust, this is rail brown. I just want to make the brake pads look a little dirty. And this is done while the overall trucks are still fairly wet. Okay, now that the brakes are done, what I'm doing is I'm lifting off a little bit of straight paint from the inside edge lip of the bottle. Underneath here, I'm going to apply this to the springs areas on the trucks, like so, and like so. Now I'm going to wash that a little bit. I'm going to wash some of that away a bit. Just a little bit. Just to kind of blend it. And I'm going to spread the wealth here all around. Wet it. Just tap it to my finger. Spread the wealth. So it's not so horribly obvious, I guess is the word. It's not this way, it's not as pronounced. I'm adding more water. That's why I'm using water as my base here, so that I can in fact, take it down if I feel there's too much and spread it around. As you can see, the brakes, the brake pads, those details are nicely done. Okay, I'm going to assist this in drying. I'm going to clean the brush and then grab the blow dryer and dry it off on low heat. On low heat. Now let them dry a bit until I move on to the next step. They're going to dry a little light, so what I did on the other side as well, I went over it with a wash of the engine black, and I mean just a wash. Because right now, they're a little too on the reddish brown side. We'll fix that right up. Okay, now it is time to just give a black wash over the brown, just a little bit. Just kind of level the playing field a little bit. Now I don't want to get the black on the brake pads. Right there, that's fine. That's all it needs. Now we'll give it a little drying, and that part of the paint will be complete. Next, I'm going to apply a little rust to the water hatch, the area around the water hatch. I'm very careful here. Hinges. There's a little bit more of a wash effect around the top of it. Around the base. Near the toolbox, that right there is a little toolbox. Keeping in mind that this is New York Central and not some little old lumber car, or lumber company car tender. I'm just going to now dab at this with a Q-tip, take up the heavy stuff, and sort of blend it into the decking itself. Like I said, I'm not looking to make this thing look like it's a wreck or anything like that. This is not the Edmund Fitzgerald or anything. I don't want it to look like a wreck. Now I'm going to take more of the rail brown. I'm going to enhance these steps here, the rail brown, and put some look like dirty footprints around. This is still the stuff that was diluted from a little earlier. It's still plenty wet. Now I'm just going to kind of blend this with the Q-tip. I'm going to blend that onto the deck as well. I'm going to add a little more rust. A little more rust to the rust. Just like so. And again, take up the excess. Yeah, there's going to be rust there. But I'll tell you, if the yard boss saw that they were getting away with that, I'm sure heads would have rolled. Now while I've got it here, I think I'm going to just dirty up the decking here a little more along the bottom. And I'm going to use get some water and liquidize the rail brown and go over here again. And while I'm at it, I'm going to take some of the rust color and I'm going to paint it on the coupler. I don't want to gum up the works. I just want to Get a little color on there. And there we go. And again, we're going to take the Q-tip and just dab the heavy dots of paint. That's all. Here, and do the trailing trucks, give the trailing trucks the same treatment that we gave the trucks on the tender. And that is the rail brown and wet water wash. Okay, just going to go over here like so. And then I'm going to do something, a little something different. I'm going to take a wash and I'm going to touch the wheels and kind of move the wheels along the brush just to get the wheels surfaces covered, just like that. There we go. And this will get that some coverage there as well. I'm going to apply the same wash to the drivers and the drive rods as well. I want to make sure that it's real wet, that it's a real super thin wash. I'm going to apply it. If I don't like it, it's coming off. Let me get some of these pipes also. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to take that off of there. Right now, I'm going to use a little Q-tip action here. Cutie Q-tip action. Cutie pie Q-tip action. Let's take that off as easily as it went on. Just take it off as easily and quickly as it went on. It's not going to get it all off, which will be okay. That'll be okay. I don't want the wheels to get that light. But I will take some thicker rail brown and I will do the brake pads, the brake shoes. Also want to kind of buck the trailing truck out a little bit so you can get the rear of the truck and over the top of it as well. And this part back here, these little details, we're just going to get them all covered and then blot it up a little bit. Blotto. I like this blotting up of the excess with the Q-tip. I really, really do. Now I'm going to get the cylinders, or at least the bottom of the cylinders, where the junk is kicked up from the bottom. Turn it up. The pony wheels a little bit as well. Now they got painted during the airbrushing session. So what I'm going to remove, I'm going to blot up what I don't want. Just blot that off the cylinder. Move it more towards the bottom and just kind of blend it. With the pony wheels. Now we'll take some wet water alone and just kind of run the water down a little bit, just like that. And that'll take it up some too. And again, it's blotto time. Time to get blotto. Bottom. There we go. Very nice. Do that on the other cylinder as well. Now the brake shoes here have received the same treatment as did the brake shoes on the tender. I'm going to just enhance this one here just a little bit more. This is not straight out of the bottle. It is diluted just a bit. I'll get a little more here. we go. I hit the cylinder here in the front, right in here, with a little bit of the rail brown also. Right there. I just hit that, and then I dabbed it with a Q-tip. Put a little bit of color there. I kind of like the way the look is. All right, now to hit the brake pads, the brake shoes. I keep saying brake pads, that's my mistake. Now to hit the brake shoes on the opposite side. Okay, this brush, by the way, is a double O, a double aught. These are a Newton. The Scepter brush. And right up there, you get the brake shoes. As far as that bar goes, take a brush that's damp with the wet water, simply brush that part away, like so. I've also gotten up along the top and front of the trailing truck. A little more color to the brake shoes, just giving them another coat, that's all. And let's see, anything else? Let's bring this here just a bit. Top of the cylinder by this valve, and we'll just simply dab the excess off, like so. Very nice. Oh, me likey. Me likey. Me likey a whole lot. All right, let's dirty up the pilot a bit, shall we? Yes, let's. Why not? Oh. Let me use a little bigger brush than this 00 Scepter. Hey, wasn't that a new James Bond movie? Scepter, 00 Scepter. All right, gonna make a little dirty wash. We're gonna dirt on the steps here, on the front pilot, the cow catcher as we called it when we were kids and didn't know what. And then we're gonna just kind of push up the front a little bit. The dirtiness, some of this away. A little too much there. Just gonna wet it down. Okay, wet it down, get it nice and wet, and come in with a little sailor boy, I mean a swabby, I mean a swab, and just do that up a little bit. I'm going to get one of the makeup applicators and get that pointed part, the pointed tip I should say, into these parts where I want to get this stuff off of here, like so. And just smoosh that around, just work it and get it off. I know my big hand keeps getting in the way, I'm sorry. I do apologize for that. But it's kind of tough to set up a shot and then try and stay out of it because my hands are what I use. One side's a little heavier, so I'm going to take that down with some of the wet water, all by itself, like so. Wet that down, take that off a bit, come in with point and dab it, dab it, there we go. I'll try to use two hands, go in with the right, dab with the left. I know it's probably in the way. Let me see if I can dab with the right hand. I'm not right-handed, that's the problem, I'm left-handed. Well, it's not a problem, but for those of you doing at home, it might be. All right, well, I kind of like that. Hey, let's get a little bit of dirtiness going up the steps. And just a little bit on the walkway. Now I'm going to take the water and remove a good amount of it. Like so. put it on the walkway and stairs of the other steps of the other side. If this does nothing else, it highlights these certain details is all. It gives it a look of being used. That it has a useful life to it. That's cool. I like that. That's very cool. Again, let's go over the walkway. All the way back and then all the way forward. And now take it off. Remove the majority of it with just the wet water. This will ensure that some stays behind, but not too much to make it look like a lumber company locomotive. You don't want one of the yard bosses coming over and going, "Hey, who was supposed to clean this engine?" And of course nobody raises their hands because they'll beat you. Life of a railroad worker back in the day. Probably wasn't that bad, but that has given it quite a bit of contrast. Very, very slight, but again, it's what I'm looking for. And there you have it. A little bit of coloration to the walkway. Here we are for the final installment of the weathering on my Broadway Limited New York Central Hudson steam locomotive. The weathering is complete and I'm about to apply a layer of Modelflex flat clear coat. Alrighty, we got the locomotive up to a good speed right here. So let's start applying. You'll notice I also, again, plug the smokestack. Now let's start giving this a good shot here. I'm using my Pache H brush to apply the finishing coat. And that's good on that side. We'll apply a little bit of heat on low heat to just dry the sealer coat. Now let's go along, turn them around, and do the other side. Here we go to the other side. I guess I'm about 8 to 10 inches away from the locomotive here. Go down the surface, front to back. Make sure we get under the piping so that we don't create a shadow. We're going to do the front of the locomotive. And now we're going to dry it. There we go. See, there's quite a sheen here. And that will turn flat. And by keeping the wheels going, the drivers, we keep the driver wheels and the dry rods from gunking up. Let's check to make sure that the roof vents are still opening and closing. Yep, they just opened. And here comes the dullness, dull finish. It's allowing a lot of the finish work to come through. Get the front of the boiler plate. This just helps it dry quicker, that's all. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to point out some of the other weathering features I did on the locomotive off camera. I just want to check to make sure that both sides are evenly clear coated with the flat. All right, as it turns out, this side could use a little more, and then quick drying with a hairdryer. So here we go. A little bit more with the flat clear coat from Badger Modelflex, and now a quick low heat application to help dry it. Now it doesn't matter that the little engineer and firemen in the cab are getting dulled, because in actuality they're a little on the shiny side. And that's not too good. Oh, I think this looks grand. I really, really do. It's super. Thanks for asking. I think I like the way this looks. I really, really do. I'd like to take this opportunity to point a couple of things out. Some of the additional weathering I did to the Locomotive was I took some Reefer Gray, and with a double aught brush, I made some streakings here from this little valve on the cylinder. I also added some gray to the sides and front, or I should say the rear and front sides of the cylinder, and then took them off, thinned them down again with some water with this square brush, this flat brush right here. Okay. I then also added some lime scale to some other important details as well. We have some lime scale here on the top of the body of the boiler. We have a little lime scale back here by this steam release area. I'm going to now do a little touch up with the engine black. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but there's a little, I guess a little drop of gray got here on one of the drive rods. So I'm gonna stop the Locomotive and do a little touch up. All right, here we go. Just a little touch up right there. No biggie. Every now and then from handling them during the process, you get a little wear spot. That's not a big deal. That's done. And you can look around the engine if you see any of the little places that need a little, there, a little bit there, a little white dot from something over here. Might be even just a piece of dust. If that's the case, the brush picks it up and takes it away. But overall, I like the way this engine turned out. The last part of the Locomotive to get is inside the cabin. It still has a slight shiny plastic sheen, so I'm going to get in there and dull it, along with the fireman and the engineer. Now, a little dryer. Dry this off until it goes flat. You see, it's starting to go flat. And here we are. The interior of the cab is now flat as it should be on a steam locomotive. The preparations that were done for the tender are as follows. I covered the coal load. I don't want the coal load getting that dull. Remember I said earlier that the coal has a shine to it. One coal has a shine to it. But you can also see that I did, again, I put tape over the plug end for the the decoder, and I also put a little piece of paper towel over the coupler. I don't want the coupler getting gummed up with the top coat. So now we're going to cover it. First I'm going to ensure it's coming out, yes. And now we go over, back and forth. We start ahead of it and end past it. And we try and hold the airbrush straight at it. Now, like I did when I painted the wheels, I hope my hands don't get in the way, but if they do, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm going to hold the airbrush and move to make sure the wheels are fully covered. I'm going to go over the top deck, the back. There's also a piece of round tape on the back headlight, the backup light, I should say. One little last thing to do, clean the wheels. The driver wheels. Gotta clean the contact points of the driver wheels. So I have a little Q-tip here with some airbrush cleaner. It's actually the flat on one of the makeup applicators, and I'm holding it below the, there's a lot of black gook coming off of there. Holding it below the contact point of the driver wheels. I already had the tender upside down and I cleaned all of its wheels by hand. And while these are going at a good clip, I'm just going to let this rub against the saturated cotton swab. Okay, I made a little executive decision here. I ran the locomotive and tender around the track, and it's a little too flat. So what I've got here, I have some of the satin, what's it called? The clear satin finish. And I'm not going to worry about hitting the main wheels, but I am going to hit part of the locomotive. I'm going to concentrate mainly on the boiler. Yeah, there we are. I'm going to concentrate on the boiler, the cylinders. What the flat did too, it took away a lot of my detail. Took away a lot of the detail work that I did. And I put a lot of, the detail for the weathering. It took a lot of that away. And I wasn't really thrilled that it did that. So let me plug the little smokestack and let's get this going. Go down the top, the locomotive, the sides. I think going over the flat will give it a decent coat. And I've covered the tender so not to affect the tender at this point. There we go. All right. Then if this gloss is too heavy, I'll have to go over it with some flat again. Now let's see what we've got here. I'm going to put the dryer on it. Well, it appears my latest idea worked pretty well. The satin was a little too plastic looking, so after that dried, I went over it with another shot of the clear flat, and what I've got now is a real nice, real seriously satin finish on this locomotive. I'm really extraordinarily pleased with it. Like I say, I didn't worry about going over the wheels. The wheels could remain flat. That was not that was not problematic for me. The wheels could remain flat, and they did, and they're fine. I'm fine with the wheels the way they are. The tender is okay being flat as it is, for the simple fact that that's carrying the coal load, so that's going to get a lot dustier. And eventually I will go over this with the pan pastels, but for now, I'd say this guy's pretty much finished. He's done. The reason I'm holding it, I want the wheels to turn freely. I want them to wipe themselves clean, I guess, basically. On the track. Yeah, he's going full bore now. So I think we're okay. Looks good. And there he is. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy. I hope you've all enjoyed this. It's been a trip. It has been a trip. and engine down. Ciao for now.